AllReasonNoLogic. G'day bar fans, it's King of the Hill with All Reason No Logic. This is a game style where a small number of kings with a large bonus team up against a large number of peasants around a battlefield. King of the Hill, hosted by All Reason No Logic, currently is on every Sunday. Be sure to join the Discord. A link is in the description below. If your cursor trips over the subscribe button and pushes down on it on the way down there, we don't mind. I'm joined by Peasants, also from All Reason No Logic.
Jumping into the game at the moment, we'll just give you a brief explanation of how this exactly works. So the 5 players in the middle are the kings. Each one of them is restricted to their little circle. Each one then is inside of a triangle part of the map, and in order to break free and assist the other kings, they have to defeat their opponents. The same's true for the peasants, where they have to defeat their king if they want to break free and move on out to their opponents. The peasants are allowed to grab the mexes inside their base, as well as one on each side of them, or if they negotiate the 2 on one side and leave the other ones, essentially 5 mexes versus the 3. To balance it out, the kings are all on plus 40 metal, and there is a no rush 10-minute timer, which means that everyone has to stay in their zones for the first 10 minutes of the game. The kings have to try and scale as hard as they can in that first 10 minutes and try and withstand the onslaught from 2 directions, or try and break one of their players before moving on to the next. We do have a couple of additional rules in there. We don't allow for artillery that can hit bases from where they sit. So that means trying to build static defense and just lob your way to victory isn't quite on the cards. But beyond that, and no air, similar sort of reasoning why. Beyond that, you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, that's it. In this cast, ladies and gents, by the way, I'm Twig, I forgot to introduce myself. We're going to jump off back and forth once we get to this 10-minute mark between the players around the map, and just look at these lanes where we see a bit more action, because we don't want to miss too much of that action. So a couple rewinds in this video.
Having a quick look down at some of the players, I'm jumping down onto myself, Pradith, one of the kings in this matchup, and we're seeing what we would consider to be a fairly standard opening. That's getting several construction bots and ramping up your wind and your conversion as soon as possible, trying to take advantage of that plus 40. Below me, we have a similar story coming out of our peasants, trying to get their wind up and soon to be conversion. Looks like very heavy on the constructors. One of the things that is slightly different about this lane versus the other lane is that there are 11 peasants, because of the way that the interface only allows us to do even numbers for restricting who's in the game. So they actually have an extra player here who's going to feed them some extra resources and has helped get down some early extractors that are out in the outfield.
So really, Prater's going to be the one that's hard done by out of all the kings. I'd be surprised if he can hold much longer than the initial start. Just with that extra eco boost, it is very hard for that king, but it kind of weighs things in the favor of the peasants. We find that in these King of the Hill games, quite often the kings, you'll have, if you have any sort of player with some experience in King of the Hill, you've got about 5 minutes before at least one lane's won or lost by a king, and this is the tipping point lane for the peasants. If this lane can be won in the first couple minutes, this is usually what gets the peasants going to beat the kings, because those kings exponentially grow. Like G said, like Prater said, the kings get a 40% bonus, so everything that they build, wind, energy, like all wind, all metal structures, even fusions, all of it gets 40% bonus on it. And once we pass the 10 minutes and they expand outside of their base as well, capturing any other mexes, including down in the middle here, you are getting that same 40% bonus. It really does exponentially grow. And yeah, the longer these games go, the more the kings really have a chance of winning.
Having a quick look at the Orange King, we've got a T2 transition coming up, but based on his resources, that one's going to be very long in coming. You actually have to time this just right so that you can get the T2 in, reclaiming the lab and having sufficient extra income, and definitely pausing while you do it, pause the construction of your wind turbines, because they all take some metal. Looking at some of the peasants that don't have the additional third person jumping in, we're looking at Atlas Field up in the light blue at the top. Similar thing again. It is just mass wind, mass expansion. Everyone's trying to get that eco boom, and he's definitely got the opportunity to do exactly that. You'll see the T2 transition will come a little bit later for the peasants than it does for the kings.
That's
For
really
example,
there's a couple what I call the metas of the King of the Hill that we're learning slowly over the weeks we've been doing this. It's been going for about a month and a half, and that is for the peasants especially. I'd say the kings equally as much actually is you don't want to do that T2 transition too early. You want to make sure you've got enough wind and conversion before you go for it, because you don't want to be doing what we're seeing here in this lane for the yuck green color, I call it, Scordon's lane. That is that T2 lab's being built out on bottomed out metal. So we just waited until a few more wind are up and a bit more conversion was up, and then did the transition off of a bit more metal. That's the way to go.
Great example for the kings. I put down my T2 lab at about 30 seconds ago, and it's completing at the same time. It's completing almost at the same time as Orange's, couple seconds behind, but it did only have a 30-second build time. My biggest issue here was that I didn't cancel my wind, so it did lag slightly behind.
Yeah, and you can see the eco in the bottom right there. You can see praise in the mid 30s, around 34 metal at the moment per second, compared to Orange's 20, 28, 29. I think it was a little bit lower when they started their production, and just having that difference and building it later means getting up at the same time, but at the end of that, when it's up, you've got much healthier eco to just get those units out a little bit faster, and as a result you're actually have one of the strongest defenses I think I can see out of the kings so far, because of that extra metal.
And that is going to be a mistake. You don't actually want to have as much defenses as the king, because you're going to spend way too much money on them. I was on the back foot playing as my non-preferred, playing as Cortex instead. Sorry, playing as Armada instead of Cortex. So I was floundering to try and get some defenses up, and it's definitely not ideal for me.
And looking around the bases, you can see most players have gone into T2, or actually I take that back, there's a lot of T1 happening, and I do like that. When you get these triangles, what usually happens, and another meta of this game, I'm going to just jump over to my lane here with Atlas Failed. What I call the meta for the peasants is one player goes into T2, dishes out their first constructor. First they'll put down the mechs. I don't think I do it here in the end, do I? I was a little bit greedy. What I should have been doing is place down this first mechs and send it over to Atlas Fail after assisting it with the construction turrets. Did I not give him a T2? What an absolute dog of me.
Greedy player.
I usually do. Maybe I was waiting for that first mech to come up.
And conversely, we actually see from Atlas Field, he's going into units early. Normally, you don't see units coming up until until the 8:30 sort of minute mark.
Well, what I was getting to was this is the meta. One player goes for mass units and one player goes for T2 to just do that damage. And you use this mass amount of units to push through that front line of the king at the start. So the peasants, that's how you do it. Finally, I'm sending a T2 over to him.
This is around about the time that a lot of players would come online building their units, and we're seeing that out of the green players that are up against Praedyth, up against the Red King. He's just starting to get his fiends out, and the T1 player is just starting to get the grunts out.
Another example of nice coordination. And you can really see the bonus that we're getting. I think I saw a few donations from the purple player through to Pickle Daddy, the green player, just to get the extra mexes, and getting quite a few fiends out already. I think I went for the same tactic, and I'm only just getting my first one out now, just after 20 minutes, with a little bit less, sorry, 40 seconds less it was. 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Yeah, and I've got about 6 less metal coming in per second, probably because I'm building defenses at the same time. I probably played a little bit defensively as well here.
That's just one of the things that you have to try and balance out best as you can.
Yellow going into a little bit of a different tactic as we approach our last 10 seconds. And that is sticking with T1 and going for mass spam. As we roll over the 10 minutes, what we're going to do now is just focus on one lane at a time. Where that's going to be my lane with Atlas failed. And for the next couple of minutes, we're going to see what happens here, and then we're going to jump back in time and look what happens in a couple other bases. You can see straight away that mass swarm of units moving across, and I think, is there enough? Yeah, the radar's picked up that there's a little bit less static defense around this side, so we've decided to attack only on one lane. That's the unlucky part of being a king, like you have to defend both entrances. But there, you're only going to get attacked on one. As a result, Rakusha is bringing an extra welder over to this side. And getting the commander up there as well, ready to throw down some D-guns. But Atlas failed going into the units at the 8-minute mark instead of the 9-minute mark like most other players, has meant he's got probably about double the amount of units out than what we were going to expect. And
he was well and truly into the units by the 8-minute mark. He already had several of the maces and centurions, and look how that's paying off. Just flooding the base. And these fiends are going to come in and clean up the last of the defenses. With the comm taken out, that's one of the win fields, and it's also just all of the eco that was transitioning into fusions gone from just that one breakthrough. And this is why it's so critical to find that balance between offense and defense, between units and structures, between eco and aggression. In this case, Rakusha went too far into eco and wasn't able to defend. Just the LLTs and welders not able to hold off.
yeah,
Two players of reasonably high skill.
I was about to say, it was probably he had the hardest lane in terms of experience against him. Atlas Fatal and myself have played this game type quite a bit as well, so I'm coming in with the Sheldons. Oh, just jumped off screen. Coming in with the Sheldons now as well, just to take out those last little things. Now, as G was saying, Praedyth was saying at the start of the game, once this triangle's defeated, that's when we say defeated, we mean if there's an LL2T left or something, it doesn't matter. You can leave your lane and go and assist your teammates. So that's that lane one essentially. So myself and Atlas Fatal can move out. This is probably a good point in time to jump over to your lane, where you've got a bucket load of stuff up, a great eco and a good number of hounds out right now, but you're up against two very established players with an additional player also helping out that lane and feeding resources.
One of the things that's happening at the moment, and this is essentially the downfall of my lane, a complete inability to deal with those cloaked units.
And it's something we're going to establish if they're fair in this game type, because there's no way in 10 minutes as a king you can defend from a lot of stuff, but to get up a counter intrusion system as well and defend your lane and have units out, it's just so much to do in such a short time. And as a result,
I was able to get the counter intrusion. I just wasn't able to effectively destroy the unit despite having vision of it.
You actually did really well. Yeah,
I was targeting them. Yeah, I was targeting them as best as can be, but unfortunately, units don't auto target these once they're visible. It's just a red. It's just a red pulse on the ground, and that red pulse is not overly accurate.
Without the three pinpointers, you're not going to get too accurate with that either. So you need to get 3 pinpointers up as well as the counter intrusion to be able to hit them. Probably the best way to deal with that would have spam ready to just run into that red dot to make it visible, because of course you can see, like with this one around here, you got the orange circle around the Spectre, and if that is intersected by any unit from an enemy team, that unit will then become visible.
Unfortunately, you have to choose what you want to achieve during a King of the Hill game. And the ability for a king to have spam, counter intrusion, pinpointers, defenses, and an army to attack with by that 10-minute mark just is not possible. So it's certainly one thing which we'll monitor over the future. And if it becomes either the kings will work out a way to deal with it, or we'll deem it to be too much of an advantage, and we'll work out some sort of balance because that's one of the things that these King of the Hill games rely on. It is balance from the community. Everyone has to adhere to honor rules. Everyone has to adhere to a lot of things because the game is only in alpha, and so it doesn't have the tools in place to allow us to formally set these up. They're just a set of rules that the community sticks to, and we're very thankful to them because they really do. And we couldn't do this without them.
A great effort by them, of course. You've just pushed in and taken out a few LTs with a couple of welders just as we pass the 15-minute mark, and your commander coming out as well. Was that a misclick, or were you trying to...
100%. 100% a
Oh,
misclick.
shit.
So my the way that I've changed the controls away from the default. Under default rules, when you bandbox units, it'll only pick up your combat units. I've changed it so that the bandboxing will pick up everything, which means that there is a high chance of me accidentally moving my comm in like that if I'm not paying attention.
Hmm.
But I found that to be a more preferable version to bandboxing my units when they're in danger, pulling them back and leaving the comm behind.
A nasty
And there goes a
Spectre on your T2 lab, and that goes down for 30 seconds, which
Yep.
is enough to get out probably 2 or 3 welders in that amount of time.
Well, the other thing is that even with that one coming in, only having those welders, I saw it. I was moving to intercept, but it still managed to get in position for that EMP. A very, very difficult strategy to deal with.
I'll just hit enter to go
And
up the chat here, and you can see how resources are being handed over from B-Bomb to Pickle Daddy, the green player, and that has meant he's been able to afford this mammoth, which honestly, like, you're not going to beat that at 16 minutes without the D-gun.
No, the mammoth was actually responsible for stopping a welder attack just before the welders, without a mammoth in the way, would have gotten to or gotten very close to those Sheldons. So this was just a very hard lane. Two very good players, two very good strategies, a lot of micro to get those stealth bots in and to get those EMPs, and then backed up by B-Bomb's eco.
And
so
you're against, but B-Bomb's extra eco makes such a huge difference. You're up against, I'd say it's more like 2.5 players because you don't have that extra production facility, but you're against, about 2.5 players worth of economy, and that is, like, you survived until the 16-minute mark compared to like the other lane which fell in 2 minutes. So nicely done there. On that note, I think we might just drop back in time and check out a couple of the other lanes. So jumping back to the 10-minute mark, we're looking over at Tank Tom's lane. He's up against the Mighty Rooster in lime green and Allentin in purple. Both of these players, Allentin and the Mighty Rooster, very experienced in our lobbies. Tank Tom, the third amigo of the AllReasonNoLogic crew. A little bit less aggressive in this lane. So we've hit the 10-minute mark. All three players not really having much of an army, but plenty of defense. These beam turrets from Allentin really do well. Welder's out as well. Welder's probably the perfect counter in this game type, and I'd tend to go Armada a little bit more just because of the Welder, because they do so good against spam without doing damage to their own units around. And now the Mighty Rooster kicking out a ton of ticks and pawns for that first assault.
One of the things that happened to Tank Tom this game was he went for heavy eco, but he overinvested into tier 1 builders, and so he didn't have the metal to get up the wind turbines, to get the conversion, to get the T2 transition. So he lagged a little bit behind with the T2 transition.
With the builders, I actually build the same amount as he does, which is 5. However, when I'm doing the T2 transition, I actually reclaim 3 of those builders, so I've only got 2 left at the end of it.
Yep. Unfortunately, and looking at the income, his wind is falling almost 1,000 below the kings that have not been destroyed at this point.
But he does have a fusion coming up right now,
and that will certainly help. But there is a tick hammering away at his constructors. Unfortunately, it's now hitting just some debris. Welders coming in, and welders have quite a lot of chonk.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Tom's actually going into a Scorpion turret on the right hand side. I reckon that's the wrong lane for this. Scorpions are atrocious against ticks. He should be putting that on the other lane where we've got the welders coming through, because they will do a lot of damage against welders. Whereas ticks, you're better off. An LLT will do better against ticks than T2 Scorpion or the other pop-up turret.
And the pop-up turret will do a lot of damage to those welders. It's got a DPS of 412, and the welder has health of what is the welder's health? I'm only seeing the plus 0% health. I'm gonna have to just retract that one and not do the maths on stream because that's a bad
2950,
idea.
2950 health for a welder.
There you go.
3k.
So certainly will still take a while to chunk through them, but it will do a lot better than the LLTs.
So I'm doing quite good at holding off these ticks, and that is purely thanks to those 3 turrets there. You've got the Scorpion, sorry, the Guard Tower, the Light Laser Tower, 29 kills already. Dragon's Maws, 12 and 14.
And the more kills they get, the higher rank they get, and the
You can see the
easier they
double
can deal with the ticks.
silver chevron over the top of that hero LLT there.
Yeah. Though the amount of aggression that he's facing is not too great at the moment. This is only a small swathe of units coming in at any given time.
And just to jump in, I was at this point in time, myself and Atlas Failed had won the lane. We were now allowed to attack adjacent lanes, and I am sneaking a termite up the back of this hill here. I don't love the termites compared to the
Definitely not as good as
counterpart.
the recluse is significantly better than the termite, but they both do the same thing in this situation.
I think Tom made a mistake by going into a second fusion and a bunch of these energy converters. Not because I attacked in the rear, but that could have all been units.
And he needs the units right now.
Yeah, you need to win your lane as a king, and I think maybe, I mean, you were definitely super aggressive in your lane. You just had it hard done by against 3 players, but all the kings in this game just happen to play quite passively, and that's not what you want to do. You want to aggress.
I totally stuffed my lane. That was mostly my fault. But if Tank Tom had been able to take that 4,500 metal and put it in units, it actually would not have had a hard time defeating the Mighty Rooster. Looking at the Mighty Rooster's base, it's literally just some wind, a comm, 2 defense turrets.
I will add a wind that's ready to go pop as well.
All of it will go pop at once. So this is where you have to work out your balance as a king, because if he'd taken those units in there before Twig's termite attack, then he would only have to defend the front and the back instead of defending all 3 lanes. And because he's had to pull the fiends from the front lane, the hero LLT is slowly being taken out, and he doesn't have the units to fight on the purple side. And now that there are fat boys up, those fiends are going to have very limited effect. The defenses are going to have very limited effect.
Fiend's a great unit, and Tom loves them, but the welders are just going to flog them, especially in these numbers. Fiends are good against about everything apart from the welders.
When welders are in low numbers, you want about a 2-to-1 ratio of fiends to beat them, but once welders are in a high number, you can have almost an infinite number of fiends and still not beat them, because they will just be able to destroy them before you get any real manageable damage on them.
That chain reaction between the lightning bolts is just crazy.
Exactly, and if you look at the ranges, the range of the welder is slightly larger than the range of the fiend. And as you said, once you get them in enough mass, that AoE just guarantees a victory.
We've got a coordinated attack happening right now. The Mighty Rooster has snuck a big amount of units in the background and going for that fusion.
And all he has to do is get either the energy or the build power. My preference is usually the build power, because once you reset a king's build power, they're in big trouble for over 2-3 minutes. But by taking out that one fusion, definitely closing up the round for Tank Tom. He's now going to start to struggle more and more. A lot of the defenses have gone down, some of the fiends have gone down, and the units are just going to keep chipping away.
The second fusion falls to my mean termites. Felt a little bit bad coming up the rear there because Tom was very busy with micro.
It's what you got to do. And you want to, like, when you've fallen when you've won your lane as a king or as peasants, you do want to take a moment to consolidate, get some res bots out, get some builders queued up to build all the mexes.
Jumping in about that. That's happened over with Atlas Field. He's gone and ecoed out, and then he's jumped over to orange and just come up the back with a ton of recluses, and you can see how much faster those recluses just do huge damage with those missiles that come out. And just like that, orange went from probably one of the stronger defenses left for the kings to having absolutely nothing left because the back was not defended. Not that it needs to be, but there was a lot of passive play over here, and now those snipers have absolutely no energy.
and that will mean the defenses fall over here as well.
Tom's commander just getting surrounded now by a bunch of grunts, and the fat boy putting in the final damage as well. Tom's lane falling, so we're going to zoom back out and focus on the entire game. Now we've covered all lanes except for yellows, Ornira, who's definitely focused heavily onto T1, skipped T2 and gone straight into T3, and I love seeing a Razorback out in 17 minutes.
Very, very strong, particularly against these T1 units. Razorbacks just shred. They shred ticks, they shred grunts, they shred pawns. But with the entire might of the map coming down on this this player, that is going to be a tough fight to win, even with tier 3. But it does show the absolute power that the Kings have. So even during all of this fighting, by 17 minutes, he's got 2 fusions, he's got conversion, mass wind, tier 3. The Kings really can become a huge threat if left left unharassed.
That's it. And it was just a bit of a... This is actually the first King of the Hill game where we had all lanes won by the Peasants. Usually, I think Kings actually have more victories than Peasants in this game mode for us. It's about 45-65% for Peasants to King wins. In this case here, every lane was won by the
I like your
Peasants.
streamer math. 110% is the total of all the win rates.
There you go. 45-65. Yep, definitely not good at maths.
And just to
45-55.
let everyone know, everyone in AllReasonNoLogic has an engineering degree.
This is why there's no point learning maths in school. You got calculators to do the maths afterwards.
And not to mention that when you're building something or working something out, no one's going to accept hand counts. It's all about whatever software kicks out.
Harpers is pinging out some damage at the back, but nicely done by the Razorback taking them out. They would have done a little bit more damage.
Just a quick note on the Arbiters. From that back corner, they can actually hit the center of the King's platform. So if you can get Arbiters behind a King, they can be so strong. Particularly if you have scouting information, you can use one Arbiter just to take out all the metal conversion. And if you take out the metal conversion, then the King is down to 6 metal per second, and that's it.
Razorback doing a lot of damage there, but unfortunately going down those Sheldon's being microed very well by the Cyan player, Ollie.
And it's fighting the welders, so it's not actually getting the units that are going to be doing the most damage. And this looks like a detonation coming out of the final King.
Battle ended.
Very nicely done. You can see there, Praetor, you took the most damage despite being out of the game for about 6 minutes at that stage there.
I tried my best, okay?
You did really well. Like, you took a hitting. Yeah, damage received 204,000. Huge damage taken there by yourself. And very fun game for all players. Like I said, first game where all the peasant lanes won. So this kind of showed the how-to for the peasants. You want to make sure you've got the T2 coming out of one of the triangle lanes and the T1 coming out of the other. I did lose a match prior to this one where we actually had 2 of the highest OS skilled players in the game, myself and another player. And we lost because we both went T2 and we didn't have any spam to counter the might of a King coming out with just some standard T2 units. They built more than we did, and we lost.
Having a quick look at the metal produced graph, one of the things which shows just how powerful that extra player is for the group of 3 peasants. If you look at the metal produced, you can actually see green spiking above myself between the 5 and 10 minute mark,
Yeah, wow.
and following not very far behind. If you add the eco of the other player in that lane, you'll actually see that they're well and truly out ecoing me for that entire time. So very, very tough defense on that 3-player lane.
Yeah, no, spot on there. I didn't even realize how hard. I'm surprised that person has outdone for that small point in time all Kings, and then for the rest of the match kept ahead of 2 of the Kings for eco. That green player.
Very, very strong. Very, very strong.
So, nicely played by you. But that is it, people.
next time you'll see me playing my preferred commander, I'll be playing Cortex, and I'll just run everyone over. I swear. I
Unless you're against
swear.
me.
I'll run you over.
No, it's a mix of wins and losses in this game type, and really fun. Join us on Sundays. It's our Australian afternoons over in Europe, and USA it's in the mornings. Obviously, Asia lined up with us in Australia as well. Jump on in, join us, hit the subscribe button to this video as well, and you'll get the upcoming stream notifications that come out with these King of the Hill matches as well. If you have any feedback or any ideas for these game types, also draw a comment down below, and also join the Discord. We have a community feedback channel in there, and 100 odd members roughly that love to contribute and put their 2 cents worth in. So we'd love to hear yours as well.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll catch you next time.
So yeah.